Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we're going to take a look at the results of a poll that asked, what is the best lightsaber battle in the original trilogy? And of course, there were only three options to choose from, one from each movie, unless you count the suggestion from our top-rated comment, which came to us from BF Jordsman, who said, Luke vs. Training Sphere. And yeah, that was rather epic. Well, at least it was for poor Luke at the time. But getting down to business here, let's take a look at the results, and we see that Luke versus Vader in Return of the Jedi took the top spot with 57% of the vote, while the same matchup from Empire Strikes Back, Luke vs. Vader again, took 39% of the vote, leaving Vader vs. Kenobi from A New Hope in last place with just 4% of the vote. And now let's right away just jump into two comments. The first from The Dark Jedi, who said, "This is a hard choice. While the Return of the Jedi duel probably has more emotional impact, especially with John Williams' score shining through at the climax, the Empire Strikes Back duel propelled Luke's character forward so much more in my opinion. It was here that Luke first experienced the depth of Vader's power, lost his hand, and discovered his true parentage. From a visual point of view, this duel is also much more dynamic because it is longer, happening in multiple locations rather than just a single dark throne room. This fight is also grittier and higher stakes since Luke is much more of an underdog in this one when compared to Return of the Jedi." And then on to a comment from Max Meyer, who said, "Luke vs. Vader in Return of the Jedi was more emotionally charged and dramatic, but if we're talking just in terms of the self-contained fight itself, Empire Strikes Back wins. In Return of the Jedi, it's not really about the fight, whereas seeing Luke so helplessly outmatched by Vader really furthers the story well, in addition to being great to watch." And both these comments make a great case for why this fight was so important for the character of Luke, and they're certainly right, but they also touch on something else, the power of Darth Vader that we finally get to see. Because yeah, after the first movie and a half, we understood that this guy in a black mechanical suit is strong with the dark side of the Force. We get that he is essentially fear and evil incarnate. Everything about him gives us that vibe. And up until that point, we've seen him do some cruel and terrible things, like killing his subordinates for failure, but we've actually seen little else out of him, nothing that really shows us what he's capable of. However, in that battle with Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, he gets to show us just how terrifying and powerful he truly is. Because at no point do we ever feel as if Luke could actually win the fight. From the very start, when Vader casually blocks Luke's first attacks, almost like he's bored, and then he pushes him back one-handed, he gives us the impression that he could strike down Luke at any point. In fact, towards the end of the fight, when Luke lands a blow on Vader's shoulder, we see the anger get the best of Vader for a moment, and he lets it take hold of him, and he literally disarms Luke within seconds, and could have easily killed him, obviously. But he doesn't want that. He wants to turn this powerful young Force user to the dark side. And no, I don't believe Vader truly thinks of him as his son, if you will. Just a means to an end, really. All he wants is an apprentice to help him defeat the Emperor, and so he can finally become the Master Sith, as all of them desire to be. And the fact that it's his son that could help him do it is likely irrelevant to Vader. All that knowledge is to him is a weapon that he can use against Luke to make him question the one Vader believes has trained Luke, that of course being Obi-Wan. But there is still another Jedi, and in the little time Yoda has had to train Luke, he's warned him about the dangers of the dark side, how easy it is to start down that path and lose yourself forever. And instead of embracing that, instead of making the easy choice and ruling the galaxy with his father that he thought was dead, Luke lets go and lets himself fall to what he thinks will be his death. And one could really argue that this is the moment Luke actually becomes a Jedi, and also the same moment that a light is rekindled in Vader, and that light is of course Anakin Skywalker, who just witnessed his son reject that which he once upon a time could not reject. This is the moment that the Jedi truly begin to make their return, as a father watches his son choose death over becoming like him, and thus reminds him of who he himself once was, which opens the door for Luke to eventually save him. And as emotionally powerful as all that is, there are moments in the Luke-Vader duel in Return of the Jedi that can certainly match if not surpass it, including the line Luke says after he tosses his saber away and refuses to fight. "You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me." And as Becky Lynch's boyfriend said in his comment, that's the real Luke. And not to change topics, but if you can't understand why many fans were disappointed by Luke in The Last Jedi, that one line really begins to explain it. That one line was the completion of a journey that spanned 3 movies and saw a farm boy from a backwater planet become someone who could calmly and boldly stand before the Emperor, the most vile and wretched being in the galaxy, and fearlessly proclaim that he had become a Jedi. And when we see Luke again in the sequel trilogy, he is anything but. Which brings us to a couple more comments. First from CamelClone134, who said, Luke vs. Vader in Return of the Jedi is the culmination of the original 6 movies, a fallen father and his son dueling to determine the fate of the galaxy. The battle of light versus dark. The music and camera work is some of the best in Star Wars, especially the moment when Luke gives into the dark side and the screen pans to follow their silhouettes fighting in the shadows. Then there's this comment from K. Muel, and my apologies for no doubt just pronouncing that entirely wrong. Anyway, they said, the moment in Return of the Jedi when Luke looks down at his own robotic hand after slicing off Vader's same hand and realizes how close he has come to the dark side as well, gives me chills every single time. It is the moment that an entire trilogy, if not all 6 movies, has been building towards, and it delivers 100%. I'm never more of a Luke Skywalker fan than I am in that moment. And these 2 comments, along with many others, pointed out how this is indeed the culmination of the previous 6 movies, what it all comes down to. This scene is the epitome of Star Wars. This is the ultimate showdown of light versus dark, good versus evil. But at the same time, it's also about a son trying to save his father, and to prove to himself he's not destined to become like him. It's both a battle to save the entire galaxy, and a battle to save the soul of one individual. And much like Vader and Luke's first encounter in The Empire Strikes Back, this confrontation again tests Luke, and now also Vader, in every possible way, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's far more than just 2 combatants trying to defeat each other. It's Vader torn between loyalty to and fear of his master, his own desire to rule and become the Master Sith, and an emerging compassion for his son. Within him is a battle between the man he used to be and the monster he became. For Luke, he believes in this goodness he's felt in his father so much that he turns himself in and tries to reason with him, to convince him to just turn from the dark side. But Luke quickly learns it's not that simple for someone who is so consumed by evil, that one cannot simply walk away from the dark side and their master. Luke's faith in his father is rewarded with an audience with the Emperor. And speaking of which, Palpatine is the wild card that wasn't present during their first encounter, the grand puppet master who once conjured up and carried out a plan that allowed him to take over the galaxy. And in this encounter, he at least thinks he has foreseen it all, and that he is in complete control of everything. And though Luke tries to stay calm and resolute before him, when the Death Star becomes operational and begins obliterating the Rebel fleet, fear begins to take hold of Luke as he realizes, and Palpatine tells him as much, that his friends are going to die. And as we of course know, fear leads to anger and anger leads to hate, and so Luke takes up his saber and lashes out against Palpatine to hopefully somehow save those he loves. Like his father before him, Luke's unwillingness to let go of those he cares about seems to be his greatest weakness, and one that Palpatine has exploited brilliantly. The same trick or tactic has now been used against both father and son by the Emperor, who only smiles as everything continues to transpire as he has foreseen. Quickly though, Luke regains his calm and composure and refuses to fight his father, and eventually he hides from him. That's when yet again compassion seems to be Luke's undoing, and Vader senses that Luke has a twin sister, and when Vader threatens to turn her to the dark side, Luke loses it and gives in to the dark side and furiously attacks Vader. And as many people pointed out in their comments, the music at this point is both haunting and beautiful and fits the moment perfectly. The dark side empowering him then, Luke easily beats Vader and eventually cuts off his hand. With his father then at saber point, Luke hears Palpatine tell him that his hate has made him powerful and that he will take his father's place at his side. Then, in one of the best sequences in all of Star Wars, maybe the best, Luke looks at Vader's missing mechanical hand and then at his own mechanical hand and realizes that he is indeed becoming his father. And yet again, Luke chooses death over the dark side by tossing away his saber, refusing to fight any further, and proclaiming himself a Jedi to the Emperor. Palpatine, realizing he's failed and that he can't turn the young Skywalker, then grows angry and decides to kill Luke. But ironically enough for Palpatine, that compassion that he's been exploiting within the Skywalkers for so long now turns out to be his own undoing, as Anakin Skywalker turns back to the light and gives his life in order to save his son. And what brought him back to the light was not only his son's continued rejection of the darkness that he himself had embraced, but because of the belief and compassion his son had in him. And there's just something ever so poetic about that ending. In closing here, what I love about both these encounters is the importance behind them. They weren't just cool fight scenes, they had true weight and meaning behind them. One is the shocking turning point of the entire story, while the other is the epic conclusion to it. And even the Obi-Wan and Vader duel in Episode 4, now after the prequels, has been given a whole new significance. And though it only captured 4% of the vote, there were many who took to its defense, like this comment here from Mr. Pittman. And though I'll confess I can and do enjoy a flashy lightsaber battle, even if it lacks any real context or significant meaning, there's just something about the way these two duels between Vader and Luke were weaved into the fabric of the story itself that really sets them apart from any other duel in the saga, outside of maybe Anakin vs. Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. And, as I lamented in a video the other day, the lightsaber battles have really felt lacking or like a weakness in the sequel trilogy due to a lack of tension and importance, at least thus far, when they used to be the most important moments in the entire story. Well, that's all I've got for this time. The next poll, which I hope to have up in a day or two, will ask which is the best lightsaber battle from the Clone Wars animated series. And since there are far more than 5 to pick from, please let me know in the comments below what 5 you think should be in the running. Or you can also let me know what you thought about this video, of course. Either way, let me know in the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.